Hello everyone, welcome to Conversations with Sakina. Today we are going to look at a cold case. I discovered this particular cold case on a channel called Scary Interesting under the Creepiest Cases of People Disappearing. This case is about a gentleman by the name of Carl Herbert Landers, who was 69 years old when he disappeared on May 21st, 1999. And I'm only going to give you a brief overview of what happened before getting into the Lenormand Grand Tableau to see what we can see about what happened to this gentleman, to see what the cards have to share. If you want more information or a fuller story, I will put the link to the channel that I just mentioned that had the full story in the description box below. Okay, so Carl Herbert Landers wanted to climb Mount Shasta. So he and a couple of friends, Milt and Barry, decided to go up on 21st of May, 1999. The most popular way to climb Mount Shasta is going up Avalanche Gulch, which is on the southwest slope of the mountain. It is there that they have a place called Horse Camp, where it is the start of the climb and you have to submit your pass for being able to climb the mountain, because that way they know who is up and who is down. It's a check-in point before anyone ever gets started. So if somebody doesn't return, they know they need to go look for them. So on this day, this is exactly what Carl, Barry, and Milt did. They went to the horse camp, which was about 4 miles, I think, from where you began, and then they proceeded to move upward. They made it to about the halfway point, which is called 50-50 Plateau, and at this 50-50 Plateau, there's really no trees or anything there. It is quite barren, and it is barren all the way up to the next tier of the journey, which is Helen Lake, and then after that, I believe, is the summit. So 50-50 Plateau and Helen Lake are in kind of a barren area of the mountain. No trees, nothing like that. Really quite impossible for anyone to hide or be lost. So anyway, they reached the 50-50 Plateau after checking in at the horse camp, and Carl wasn't feeling really well. He had taken some kind of medication to help him with altitude sickness, so throughout the night he was sick. He had diarrhea, just didn't feel well. So in the morning, he decided to take off early so that he wouldn't slow his friends down. He figured he could at least make it to Helen Lake, which he was in good enough shape. That should not have been a problem. Barry and Milt watched him go, and then they started packing up the camp so that they could follow. They were all going to meet at Helen Lake. Unfortunately, part of the way to Helen Lake, Barry got sick and turned around and went back to 50-50 Plateau. Milt kept going, and he figured he would find Carl at Helen Lake. When he got there, Carl was not there, so Milt assumed that Carl must have been feeling better and was going ahead on to the summit. And he even asked people at Helen Lake, and they said, well, they saw one guy go. So Milt followed. And when Milt followed, he saw a guy, but this guy was moving really fast. And after a little while, Milt realized this couldn't have been Carl. He was just moving too fast for someone who hadn't slept very well and wasn't feeling well. So Milt turned around and came back to Helen Lake, still no Carl, and so he went back down to 50-50 Plateau, where he found Barry, and they headed back down to the horse camp because they figured that maybe Carl had passed them somehow and went down for medical help. When they reached the horse camp, it showed that Carl, had not returned. So that's when they started a manhunt. So despite the manhunt and all the people that actually were a part of searching for Carl, no one found any trace of him whatsoever. He just disappeared. And he disappeared from the 50-50 plateau to Helen Camp, which again was not full of trees, but there just was no sign of him. No prints, no tracks, no belongings, no clothing, no nothing. He was just gone. So we are going to do a grand tableau on this case to see if we can determine what may have happened to Carl. We're using my Purely Simple Lenormand, which is a deck I made for myself and unfortunately is not for sale at this time. But I am going to charge these 4 cards. These are the ones that we will pay very close attention to when the grand tableau is laid out. So this man card is going to be Carl Herbert Landers. The dog card will be for his 2 friends, Barry and Milt. The fox card is going to be for a third party, someone we know nothing about. And the woman card is going to be for the Lemurians. Now this is the odd twist. Mount Shasta has history concerning the Lemurians. These are 7-foot tall beings who dress in long white robes and sandals and were said in the 1940s to come down out of the mountains to go to a local store and buy supplies. And they only paid with gold chunks. Now it's also said that every now and then Mount Shasta will get a cloud above the mountain, and that cloud is said to hide a UFO that comes and hovers above Mount Shasta and perhaps offers things to the Lemurians who are supposed to live inside that mountain. So we're going to have the woman be the Lemurians to see if perhaps Carl was taken by the Lemurians or met foul play. We're using the dog for the friends because Lenormand has a male and a female only. And as you can see, the cards are numbered, so extra cards can be added, but I'm not going to do that at this point. So obvious man with Carl, the dog as a loyal friend we're using for Barry and Milt. The fox is sly, he is deceitful, he is considered very sneaky, so we're going to use this for a third party. And then the woman as the other card, no specific connection to Lemurians, but we are going to charge her as the Lemurian card. So now that that is all explained, I will shuffle up and lay out the grand tableau to see what we can discover. I will speed through this process so that you don't have to sit through the layout, as we use all of the cards and it can take a little bit of time. So shuffling first. Okay, so the first things that we're going to look at here, just quickly a scan to determine where everything is. So we have Carl himself right here, and the cards directly around him here are considered his near cards, or excuse me, very near cards. And the ones that are here are considered the near cards. Anything beyond this line here, all these right here, are considered far. So these cards are ones that we would prefer to have not good cards, such as the scythe and the snake and the coffin and just various cards that just aren't friendly cards. Then we have obviously the fox, which was the third party card. So something sly, deceitful, and it is in his near. Now we can't jump to conclusions and just assume that this is what has happened to him. Okay, we need to take a look at the rest of the cards for that. His friends are in the far section, so obviously they are not the culprits. They did nothing to him. The Lemurians are in what is called the fate line and are also in the near line. So we have between the third party and the Lemurians here. This is how it's looking with the cards. So let's go a little bit deeper here. From the first three cards here, which basically begins this story, it looks like this was a goal that Carl obviously wanted to complete in his lifetime. But unknown to him, there was some hidden knowledge that he didn't have. Something about a contract with someone concerning this climbing Mount Shasta. There was a hidden something subconsciously, is my take on this. So it seems as though this may very well take a supernatural twist or a supernatural tone. So his goal to climb Mount Shasta, but there was something within his subconscious mind that made this very important to him. And it was due to a commitment, due to some kind of a commitment that he had made subconsciously with someone. Okay, we're just going to leave it as someone. We know we have a third party card here, and we know we have the Lemurians here. So if we add in the four corner cards here, we have the goal to climb Mount Shasta, and knowing that Carl had the ambition to go from bottom to top. That's what his goal was. And we know that there may have been a third party, and that very well could be the solution here, is that the third party was to blame, or the third party is who he had this subconscious commitment to. If we look at the center cards, which is kind of the heart of the whole matter, the star card is a guidance card. So again, in a supernatural tone, it seems as though Carl was guided to climb Mount Shasta subconsciously. And there would be somebody arriving on Mount Shasta for him. Somebody very powerful, somebody very large, and somebody who had his well-being in mind, his best interests in mind. So if we come down here to the fate line, we see our Lemurian card, and we see the clover, which is a card of opportunity. We see the child card, and we see the bouquet. Child card is obviously innocence, someone who's very trusting, and the bouquet card is an invitation card, a pleasant surprise, something that will make things better. So it looks like we had, the Lemurians, it appears, offered Carl an opportunity. And for some reason, he trusted what they were offering him. Now, to the general public, and because Carl was never and has not ever been found, it would appear that perhaps the Lemurians made it look like there might have been a third party, or just let people think that there was a third party involved. And in actuality, there was. The Lemurians would be a third party, but they're not shown here as deceitful, nasty people. They're shown here as someone that Carl had a contract with and was guided to, who met him on the mountain. Large people. Well, 7 feet tall is pretty large. And then, were there for his well-being, whatever that means. So somehow or another, perhaps he was at one point in time a Lemurian before he was human. So when he came into this life as a human, perhaps he came from the Lemurian culture. And this, since he was 69 years old in this lifetime, he'd lived a good long time as a human. So maybe it was time for him to go back to the Lemurian culture, living inside of Mount Shasta. Now, if we check out his line of sight here, before we do that, let's take a look here. We have Carl's goals, what he wanted to do, and that was basically traveling. And, climbing a mountain is definitely travel. And I think doing this travel perhaps helped him with whatever burdens that he carried. And this is kind of a hidden factor here, is that, he had burdens that he carried. Maybe, and whatever this commitment was that he had, whatever he was being guided to, the hidden knowledge, whatever this commitment was, maybe it was to release him of his burdens. And the moon card is a card of recognition. So we have hidden information in his mind. And eventually he would recognize what that hidden information was. And I think this has to do with, again, once he was able to get up onto Mount Shasta, we have, his commitment to the Lemurians, those very large people. And he maybe didn't recognize them immediately, but the recognition would come with his journey up the mountain. Now, so if we look at his line of sight, we see the birds, and this is just basically saying that at first he had kind of a freaked out kind of feeling when he went out on his own, which soon turned to feeling very comfortable as he was guided by these individuals, and where the hidden knowledge, or he had the opportunity, or was given the opportunity to go back or continue on the path he was on. If he continued on the path he was on, he would be cut off from the human race, taken from the human race, and taken inside the mountain. So in his column here, we have the book, which we've determined is hidden knowledge. So hidden knowledge and a spotlight basically being put on him, where it looks as though there was some kind of struggle. So by a third party, and it was just a mess. Everything was a mess. When in fact, this mess, this line here came from the minds of the Lemurians. It is what they put into the minds of those searching who could not find Carl. The coffin is way over here. So I don't take it to mean, that he has passed, because it is not anywhere near his little square here. The only reason, the mountain is far also, but with his line of sight and the story that went with this card being at the tail end, I believe this needed to be where it was, where it showed up to explain how Carl actually got to this point. And with the fate line here, with the Lemurians and the opportunity that they gave Carl that he just innately trusted, their invitation, because he had already, in his subconscious mind, knew that he had a commitment to be guided by these people. So this is what I get from the Lenormand cards with this Grand Tableau of Method of Distance. I'm not a versed reader by any stretch. I'm learning, but I find what is given here extremely intriguing. So if you are a Lenormand reader, feel free to correct me or throw in your comments in the comment section below. That would be so helpful in my learning process. So that's it. Until next time, take care.